Mr. Kwapran Frempong. We also have the Deputy General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party in the person of Dr. Antoinette Tibu Dako. Then we have the Deputy IT Director, Stephen Forsen, also here with us, myself, George Probia Santi, Deputy National Communication Director, and then my senior colleague, Dr. Asidi Kukru, also Deputy National Communication Director, who double as the Dean of the Communication Direction of the party. That much I do. Once again, you are welcome to the headquarters of the New Patriotic Party. Our Communication Director this afternoon will be engaging you on some critical and pressing national issues. At this juncture, I humbly invite to the podium Dr. Richard Anyawa to
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the headquarters of the New Patriotic Party. We called you today to address some troubling matters to do with the actions and inactions of the John Dramani Mahama administration that threatens the democratic rights and contribute to the grave worsening of the fight against galamsey in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2024 general election was a pivotal election because a lot was at stake. There was the need to sustain the economic recovery that began in 2023, to eliminate the worsening or the state of galamsey in our country, to improve infrastructure and create more jobs for our young people. It was a difficult fight that Ghanaians faced, and while we, the New Patriotic Party, was hopeful to win that election, given the programs and policies in our manifestos, we lost the election to the National Democratic Congress, led by John Dramani Mahama, who at the time we warned that did not have a clear-cut plan to tackle the challenges confronting us. 3 months into the presidency of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, Ghana faces a regressive resetting agenda that we must all stand together to fight in the interest of protecting our environment and the rights of our people in this country. In essence, to save our democracy against the grave incursions on the rights of our citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have observed so far from the NDC government is a regression in civil rights and human rights of citizens, and the efforts to fight illegal mining worsening as the NDC members, emboldened by the subtle promises of the campaign, as the NDC campaign, emboldened and are now going out and raping our forest cover with impunity. Ladies and gentlemen, holding people accountable, that is, former government appointees and officials accountable, is an ingrained value, is an ingrained system, or is an ingrained value of the New Patriotic Party. We believe in holding public servants or people who have been appointed to take public office accountable. That commitment led us to the establishment of the Special Prosecutor's Office and increased funding for the Auditor General whilst we're in office to increase their efficiency and effectiveness. In other words, we believe in accountability. Therefore, we are not averse to the fight or genuine efforts aimed at holding people accountable, and including members of our government accountable for their service. However, we are concerned about the evident violation of citizens' democratic rights and the clear strategy of the John Dramani Mahama administration to try individuals accused of potential acts of corruption in the media rather than in the courtrooms. This is not prosecution. it is persecution. Ladies and gentlemen, the government is not interested. The John Dramani Mahama government is not interested in prosecuting corruption, but one of its landmark decisions since coming into office was by the Attorney General issuing nolle prosequi to clear all NDC members standing trial. And I'm sure all of you are aware of this. They cleared every single member of the John Dramani Mahama former administration, cleared them of all wrongdoings, and they walked free. This is no evidence. This shows clearly that the government is not committed to fighting corruption. That was the first action they have taken, and this was designed and actually directed by the president himself with a clear plan to clear the path for them to target the new patriotic party, their political opponents. Article 19 of the 1992 Constitution guarantees the right to fair trial, including the presumption of innocence until proven guilty by a court of competent jurisdiction. The Attorney General and Minister for Justice, Dr. Dominic Ayine, an accomplished lawyer, is aware of this provision but have chosen to disregard it and instead engage in a media trial, presenting untested evidence to create an impression of guilt in the minds of the public about people his government accused of having engaged in acts of corruption. This is an irregular act. This is not how the fight against corruption has been carried on as far as this Fourth Republic is concerned. Many of you are aware that the Akufo-Addo administration prosecuted some of the NDC people and jailed them. But those actions leading to their persecution and holding them accountable was not a media activity. Some of them, some of those persecutions, people criticized us and as though that we were not doing anything. It was only because those actions that needed to be taken to hold people accountable was taking place in a courtroom rather than in the media. And we expect this government to do so, and we're willing to support them in every way possible to undertake the prosecution of corruption according to law in the courtrooms, not in the media. Now, what we have seen so far from them is a deliberate act of inciting the public and trying to incite public sentiment against the new patriotic party by creating these media events to talk about people's guilt, to talk about evidence rather than taking those evidence to court. And this is one of the key things we think that we need to bring to your attention, because it is a deliberate act that the government is undertaking because it feels that perhaps it didn't have enough evidence, or the evidence it has against these individuals that it claimed have conducted acts of corruption, that either the evidence they have, they know cannot stand a test of scrutiny in the courtroom, or they simply are engaged in a political persecution to vilify individuals and create disaffection for the new patriotic party. And so the question we ask, ladies and gentlemen, is why the Attorney General is not going to court, but rather going to the media. Why is that? Ladies and gentlemen, the answer to these questions are one of two possibilities. It is either the Attorney General lacks confidence in the supposed evidence he has to withstand the rigor of trial in the courtroom, or that the media trial is part of the government's grand agenda to defame its political opponent, being the new patriotic party. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that it is the latter. That it is the latter, perhaps both. That the National Democratic Congress, the John Dramani Mahama administration is engaged in a plot, one, to defame the New Patriotic Party because he knows that the evidence he has cannot stand the test of any scrutiny in the courtroom, and so it results to a media campaign to create disaffection for the New Patriotic Party. And we believe that that's is evidence of his lack of commitment to the fight to reduce corruption in his government and also to hold former government appointees accountable.
All right.
As I indicated earlier, the government is not interested in combating corruption, but in persecuting and sowing seeds of disaffection against the New Patriotic Party. This is why the government has positioned persons like Richard Japa and others in key positions within the national security apparatus to use all means necessary to intimidate, to harass, and humiliate Ghanaians with impunity. Ladies and gentlemen, that would not wash. That attempt would not wash, ever. Because Ghanaians will judge this government based on its performance and not how well it has defamed its political competitor. Yeah. And in the process undermine the rights and liberties of Ghanaians. The performance of this government so far has been disappointing given the 2025 budget and the significant deterioration in the fight against illegal mining galamsey. Let's talk briefly about the 2025 budget. The 2025 budget is disappointing, and I'm sure all of you will agree, despite the generous contributions they enjoyed from the National Economic Dialogue. President Mahama campaigned to establish a 24-hour economy. And all of you are aware, we stood here many times to tell you that was a scam, but somehow it fell through the cracks and then we voted for them. Today, the evidence from the 2025 budget, you will agree with me that it's indeed a scam in the making. The 2025 budget, as you will agree, made no provisions for the implementation of the 24-hour economy. The only comment we hear about it is that sometime along the line, the finance minister will bring a policy proposal to Parliament for consideration about the 24-hour economy. There is no allocation in the budget for it. The government's priorities in the 2025 budget clashed with the expectations of Ghanaians, which is evident in the funding allocations for the programs in the budget designed to impact lives. It is unusual for a government that has won election on the promise of jobs and economic growth to allocate significantly lesser resources to support development in the real sector of the economy. The government has earmarked a whopping $2.711 billion for compensation at the Jubilee House, exceeding the allocations made combined for the following programs, shall I say, flagship programs for the government. One, the Agriculture for Economic Transformation. A total of $1.5 billion was allocated for that program. The National Apprenticeship Program, a total of $300 million allocated. The National Coders Corps, this is supposed to take care of some 1 million Ghanaians. A total of $100 million was allocated. You've heard about the Jumeirah program. A total of 100 million is what they allocated. And a few women amongst us this afternoon. The Women's Development Bank, a measly 51.3 million is what they allocated. All this put together is less than what the president allocated for his office. For the compensation, I'm not talking about anything else. There are many things that they have allocated for the Office of Government Machinery. But this is just for compensation of a handful of people at the Jubilee House. 2.7 billion. More than what they have allocated combined for these flagship programs that they said they were going to do. So from here, you can see that the government's priority is not the good people of our country, who they canvassed, whose votes they have obtained on the back of a promise that they are coming to create a certain Ghana with a certain program of resetting to a better place. But then now we see clearly that they are resetting us backwards, and we all have to try and fight to resist that. It is not done yet. I have seen some efforts across the society, women especially, who are intent on fighting back to see that these promises, especially the promise on the Women's Development Bank, is realized. But I can tell you that with this allocation, there's very little that you can hope for. So ladies and gentlemen, how can this be, as I indicated earlier, with this allocation and the promise they made to us, there's a clear mismatch in terms of the commitment to deliver on these promises. The budgeted amount for compensating a small group of people, as I indicated, who are working around the president, is higher than the allocation made to impact the lives of millions of young people and Ghanaians at large. Many have criticized this misplaced priority in the 2025 budget. The Chief Executive of Agri-Impact, Mr. Daniel Fahine Akwe, a significant stakeholder whose view from his criticism suggests to me that he was not consulted, his views were not sought, even though the government is going on a spree, creating the impression that they are a very consulting government. But a stakeholder such as this has not been consulted. And he has come out to criticize the allocation for the agricultural sector as insufficient. Others, including the AGI, have also criticized this budget. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that the budget is at variance with the expectation of the people of Ghana. The Women's Bank, as I said, also suffer another fate where the entire allocation for it is less than what has been allocated to the Lone Ranger Office, the Office of Government Communication, that sees a whopping 78 million Ghana cedis compared to the 51 million allocated for the creation of the Women's Bank to affect the lives of millions of women in our country. One potentially positive aspect of the 2025 budget, I must say, is the elimination or the removal of the 10% betting tax and the e-levy. By the way, something that we had scheduled to repeal if we had won the election. So if we take that out, the balance of the 2025 budget has very little to offer in terms of the expectations of our people. I tell you, the dissatisfaction with the 2025 budget is widespread. And so it's not a thing that you will say that it's a new patriotic party that is opposed to it or is not happy with it, but it is widespread. And as I've indicated, in the days ahead, we'll be engaging in conversations to do with the budget, and we are sure that Ghanaians will get to understand that indeed we have made the wrong choice in selecting the NDC and not the NPP. But for now, let me turn my attention briefly to the fight against corruption. Galamsey. The fight against Galamsey has significantly deteriorated. Just before the election, you heard calls in civil society, championed also by the National Democratic Congress. The president now have been seen on platforms saying that Ghanaians voted for us, and so therefore we must resolve the problem of galamsey. Some have called around that time for a state of emergency to be declared. The NDC participated in that conversation and created the impression that we're not willing to do much about the fight to curb galamsey. But today, you will agree, as I tell you, that this government lacked the commitment to fight galamsey. And what exacerbation we're seeing in galamsey around the country is as a result of the lack of commitment of the John Dramani Mahama administration. Yes. Today, our forests are populated with recruited militants from Ivory Coast and other regions to protect galamseyers who, according to media reports, are NDC members. Yes. Currently, mining has devastated 44 out of the 288 forest reserves in our country. At this rate, we risk losing all our forest cover to galamsey. A situation when you ponder should cause a shiver in your spine, because you have seen recently operatives and party members of the NDC actively preventing task force or security forces detailed to fight corruption and protect our forest cover. The NDC, ladies and gentlemen, is complicit in the astronomical growth in illegal mining in our country, because they campaigned actively in galamsey areas with coded promise, which translates to mean that we will allow the boys to galamsey simply by looking aside and pretending to be doing something about fighting galamsey. So in other words, the NDC is talking more about galamsey, is talking more about the fight to curb galamsey than actually doing anything to fight it. With the NDC government in power now, these members and supporters whose votes they canvassed, and as events have turned out that they have obtained, have come back to take their pound of flesh. That's why you see the devastation around. That's why you have seen a renewed vigor amongst the galamseyers out there with militants to protect them. And the government cannot do anything about it besides talk. You heard recently the commissions on blue water guards, which blue water guards are not primary fighters. They are complementary to the fight, but then they are presenting them as their key proposition to fight galamsey. And the individuals you see do not exude that confidence or have the stature or the readiness to be able to combat or engage any galamseyer or galamseyers who are wielding guns and machetes with the people we saw in the video who they have trained to be the blue water guards. And as I indicated recently, this blue water guard situation is not news. We have the river wardens trained and deployed somewhere in 2022, 2023. And so it's not a new thing they are doing. It is not the panacea to resolving the galamsey situation. It's complementary, and the NDC is merely just talking about it. The real work they must do today is to be able to get security people to go out there and tell their party people to stand down. And all the people they have promised that they will allow to galamsey to stand down so that our rivers and our forests can be saved from the ravages of their acts. As we speak, ladies and gentlemen, the Ofin Shelter Belt Forest Reserve is infested with galamseyers who recently attacked and injured Forestry Commission rapid response team members. In the Brain North District, several forests have been overtaken, namely the Chenchenso and the Jarit Forest in Okatakyie. This was just days ago, 2 days ago. We've had these activities recorded. Additionally, the Tano Enua Forest in Awin, the Asenyano Forest River, and the Jimbra Forest Reserve in Kariet District have also been taken over by galamseyers. Ladies and gentlemen, the lists of our forests that are being raped by these NDC galamseyers who have been emboldened by the president's overtures in the campaign is just astonishing. And this is an unprecedented situation. The government must use every necessary resource to regain control of the situation. One of the key, ladies and gentlemen, one of the key actions in this direction is the revocation of LI 2462. The president promised he would do this in the campaign. We want to remind him that he must do that. In making this comment, let me quickly commend the Media Coalition Against Galamsey led by Dr. Okatakyie, our brother Erastus Asaridonko, and other civil society organizations that are engaged in ensuring that the fight against Galamsey is brought under control since this government took over and it has taken a turn for the worse. President John Dramani Mahama, using the Galamsey fight in the 2024 campaign, stated he will repeal LI 2462 to end mining in our forest reserves. However, as president, he has gone back on his promise to revoke the legislative instrument and instead has offered to amend parts of the law which takes away the president's power to approve applications for mining in forest reserves. So this is a tokenist approach which does not end mining in our forest reserve. Given the rate at which the NDC operatives are taking over our forests, under John Dramani Mahama, we are likely to lose the vast majority, if not all, of our forest cover. Ladies and gentlemen, amending the instrument will not suffice, considering, as I just said, the rate at which the forest covers or forest reserves are being attacked with armed protection from outside this country. A complete repeal of the law is necessary and is what we must demand to ensure a total ban on mining in our forests. We recall the state of the Galamsey fight under President John Dramani before he exited office in 2017. It was a total give up. His Minister for Lands and Natural Resources gave up on the fight. This time is very early on. It seems to me as if he just is continuing from where he left off. It appears today in our country that the fight against Galamsey has been given up on. The president is not focused on fighting Galamsey. What we experienced in 2016, or before the president left office, is coming back, as we all can tell. Members of the NDC are visibly emboldened to engage in illegal mining because they realize that the president and their party will be lenient on Galamsey because of the promises they made to Galamseyers in the campaign. So we face a choice, especially in protecting our environment, that if the president is not interested in fighting corruption, but rather is engaged in persecuting his political opponents, our environment is being sacrificed and our democratic rights are under attack. This is what we voted for. But this is one thing that we must all come together and fight. People say elections have consequences. The consequence of our choice on December 7th is facing us. Already, I get a lot of calls from young people who have been retrenched from employment they have attained legally and legitimately. Just yesterday, an announcement was made as though it was a pride point to say that some 100 people have been let go from the Ghana Post. This is what we voted for. But I know that this is not what Ghanaians were expecting when they made this choice.
We want them.
As it stands, we must fight at least one to ensure that our rights, at barest minimum, our democratic rights, are not completely taken away from us. The rate at which the Attorney General is going, we fear that might happen unless we speak up. So for me and for us, this is not a partisan call. This is a call to protect this Fourth Republic. All actions of the government must comport with the law, must be in accord with the law. And also, the fight to protect and save our environment must be spirited, and the government must commit itself to ensuring that we preserve our environment. As citizens, we can't sit and feel helpless. We must engage. We cannot be indifferent. Therefore, we urge all Ghanaians to join us in this fight to protect our environment, our water bodies, and our democratic rights for ourselves and for our posterity. Thank you very much for coming. So, me and Yadamina said, and there for one by. Now, someone, I said, for me, I said, it was 2024, I got my band. Now, NPP, when I saw said, even with it, the son said, she said, yeah, say, I'm back. Now, policies are, and you have to acquire more economy. I started to say, Adrian and also every COVID-19, and they Russia, Ukraine, say, now you need that say, you can afford my acquaintance one. With me, I'm Hon.Sarah, every 2017, 2018, 19 now, with me, I signed the Ghana for that review. But I'm Ghana for it, Obama, and this. I John the man Mahama. Now, if it's every year, we need no, I will hear or Ghana as we fit is or more year basic then. Actually, I say, or more any, in fact, before Pramba Corn, I say, yeah, campaign that you can't catch the Ghana for say. President John the man Mahama, you wouldn't have. Baba baby, I'm an Jumayan Swedi. Magana for Pamon. I didn't tell Pamon, Abra, because he said, yes, to Baba, December 7, one tray at the Fufrubia or Babaye, apart from the Oya, Yamta or Poya. One kind of Fufrubia. It's really so only plan the gear, or the best said the gear or down. But here kind of Ghana for a tip. Now, some man, he has a man too, and I'm going to my NDC. And he every sell by or the nano and every fire Ghana. Some people are not the nano, not if we know your picture, no more optics, public relations, and no more governance or more. Every I drop by the Yeshua said we go to meet the South to be say, we no Masha says somewhere, and I said, we no Macasa on Maya. I did you almost say, oh, yeah, that one. And he, Yama be. And the embassy at it to you. Now, as I say, only creating no matter. Okay, I say campaign, no one almost say corruption. To my father, you say, oh, corruption in the way politics. As I say, oh, by my grand crack anymore, abate ora nyina saa ora yi aka se omoni nyina so e kire mbedi tu muzo omoni nyina so no ehwehwe mu amoye nyina da koma atene general sorry na obey press conference attorney general sorry na obey press conference china obey press conference attorney general so no eje press conference ni media no oye court na so wo na omo se abadada mu fuo no di bone aye kata hyehyɛ any proye bebre a maka na eno mu no na omo so mo evidence but evidence no omo tumi fa court de bia betra media na ye say nipa din bone so why say ti nyina no ye mo akiri na de akire ne say o ma fa adwene say court ne de omo nko as I be omo court ne kura omo nim say evidence awo ko ade court ene nyina so say omo court a o me di na say allegations on aya fa di panamo court before aso say ampara di pane di sa happen enti before kura mbako court agogo di sa nkuku amba media for say abeka so si besi we yeska we dwane kura kwate e wo e friend say Senegal e kana ye afa plane akopie London na wasa sheda say oko Dubai and wasa de chi akọ London and wa be Ghana ana se mo kwa e kire say omo se nipa ni di omo kan to Ghana for team mu say nipa na bi bone kura say yakoko but Ghana han yo mra sa mra ne kire say nipa bia say nyina ate say obi ababa ko edu say sia so osimesi wo kwa famade mra ne kire say sa nipa no say wodi kan kasa no kire say ampara wodi sa bone say ode enyaso akọ court kire say ampa ya me kan me hu picture ni letter ni bank account ni we say na kire pa asesa ni akomu ahwese ampara ya o kan ye sa proof no very important hu bebere say nipa etwa asemato nipa say be court no court be hwemu brakwa so no na nipa ni before no assign no nya na nifa mu enti emra no ahyehye say ma obia nye saa say we twa asemato obi so na say nipa no ye da asemato so ara o say so obi twa asemato so ana say aban bo twa asemato so na o kasa no a say ye susu say onye saa bone no ekosi abra court be ka say ampara ya hwemu evidence kire say ampara para waye ade no ansa etumi aka say we disable attorney general oye mranim ni a onim say sa ade we our constitution article 19 a provide say man susu obia say odi bone until say court be ka say odi bone alesa say onim say ni nsemu a o twata di password enye no kore ana say oni di asosa odi kan e ka to ma foti ama ma fo aka so and before there wa go pro no o si mesi there o go pro no ansakra ansaya fekate enti we a o ye say court na court ko ka so asema o ka nya no kore di pai wo nya sa adwa na Ghana for adwuma yo munya ebia before the court for akoye Canada na court for the judge ba enti agenda and is for asset instead say attorney general court and the bia ne kasa the bia ne press conference enti e ka mo e mo bo chire say the obo ye ki say anya prosecution bi na on person mo ye e persecution e your time e we na and na NPP for and the say be ya Ghana for e be nya NPP whole time so omo ba e ma be e go na be yes nya do pre na the camp na attorney general atibie ni say NPP be jira ho ama emra say emra be ayen ye etia say obi edi bone e wo yemu na e de be fa bra kwanso ye fa ni pa fa bra kwanso say dey amachire but me en fa ni pa no na to press conference ma en gunu mu fi ma ni pa su say ni pa ni ya de bone ye ni abra ye wo de bra mu say apara police happen. Safo no e be say attorney general oti na odi ye kuma na eboye se be ya amfo fa wo bi a constitution dey guarantee no on fa NPP for na asem ye ka ho a ye be se ye ka ya wo hia pa ni se ye galamsey mo se ye sa se yensuo ene ye forest mo se mo a na NBC fi se o ba ba mo 27 January 7 2025 ishise ya ye a ye ko enimu na pese ye bi sa galamsey so atita pansi NBC for and share and just say during campaign we normally now galamsey areas chiro mo so mo de monto mai na ye ba be ma mo kwan mo ye dwuma sa o de yi video bo ho a from 2020 no mo start cancer assembly in 2024 no mo to aso ya man for o tu share cancer assembly enti wa cancer we actually dipa na wo kuro ya wa we ni election o na say dipa ni be jai galamsey no a enti ene no galamsey atete say omo a eye galamsey ananka first omo suro say aban nipa ba be chi omo ana security ba be chi omo say si ade omo nya kukudro because of madamfo aba oyonko a mo na hwibom aba na omo wo bush ekika so ye beba to ama mo beba ni aka no omo nya aba na omo nya aba ni de obia abege le chefa toni a ye galamsey onya na nye NDC fo a mo hwe so be ye enne no madamfo John Dramani Mahama de NDC ku amaba omanya kudro a ne matiesi mu forest ni nyina kwa ni nyina magia na mu stories de mo media for mu ni e ba ko ni papa ku mi no abaso ene ejiremu a magie se sa ejuma we a mo ni galamsey for mo ni se be se yesu ni asase be se daachi ma ye ma e ba mo so dia e na na mu dia ya ya so hwe so ya be so ye to mo ba mo nya bi e kra fa mo kra yemia Dr. Enashibe ne yemia Rasco Society ene civil society organizations a bi mu akotire se sa galamsey e be bra no ase ye damas na ye gina oduma no so aka tra ba ni se o mu se wa hye bo so be ma o ma galamsey but ene ye sire no onhwe na omu nkutia galamsey the forest ni nyina be brema ko di wa ase ko be bi biara na galamsey for na ja se o ma ko wremo wi ana so mo fa plan so ma ko wremo and then the other say o ma import to security for militants agricos a maybe twe mo no mo ko mo na say ne abrase no mo nye duwa bia ya in terms of so o ma ko sa ko ma ko fa mo o mo ni protection and security mo pa o mo tuo o forest mo ko galamsey for mo ba say o mo tu galamsey enti ene security for kra e ko a forest a mo suro mo ko pio mo so aye eni o mo adisi eni na bi ye bo bi tuo e bi so e twe e disi kan bi twe na we aya dia e ye debresa apart from say essay in forest ne sase any issue a national security threat say and quite more na say your forest e wo no omo ahempo no kuretuo omo dey terrorizing the national security for and say police for the soldier for omo so mo bo the forest no ban the bad say omo amo dey obro security for the no so a let us say your forest no obe say ni tro be enti enne yensuo a say ya koso nyina na forester they take you over nyina free NDC ya papa John Dramani Mahama imre yo a oye ewo sa galamsey sewe na dia yesere ne say onye ne say oma ni nkoko na one the party for enkasa say galamsey no eye omunjai no omunjai na addition so no o share boss e mre bi wo a friend of li 2462 I pass here mapa say o to be a mine war a forest no o share bo campaign mo say be sa na nefi wo sa mra no it be free war Beboa ama ya ban mining our forest BM Ghana. At least, say the my space can to me control. Say ye na possible. TSR says I'm Ramo Kai so be if you only free. And now I know say Ramo and Hawaii County from in 21 days. The now I know say it on 1 week be a airport. It in no time. Emrano and mature now you implement here. Mining in forest, no, ever cost area. The embassy sign is a president, no, all any power approve. But approval process, no, ever cost I just say, the part of also am mining in forest. And the galam say, no, a bear words. Some rano, say a year free one. It is red, say, Boshena, ever back on the money, my share. Ominisu. Now, I'm running our papa and dear, I train say in the next 21 days, I'm mature now. Omodia man. Onko ye brand now, every. Sebeya, mining in our forest, no. Ibejai. Sebejai ground. Because Onubai, the crop for our table forest, say, Jai, and this I'm Brawe and Fubo. Now I say, or no more back to one day if you are. Process now, or perform Akakoye, mining or forest. And not still. And I think for so maybe I can to say, obey, and I'm saying, or my fuck my dear, so some or fuck my dear, so no matter what I'm saying. Pamno, Yenny and Danny Freehold. Now, MBA say, mining or forest, or Ghana hanging out where they are to swap, be a to me call and conquer. Yeah, we move to one day who says any part of whom I so to make us all we won't crack away, we won't crack away, and I'm here. So I can say, one of the no go area. Say, I never saw the forester, you walk down better than I'm saying here. Now, the best say, media for most of them are overcome and two. They are making sure, say, if I take some message, they are also Ghana. To me, I am John the money Mahama and this before. And yet to me, I have Towa, and yet to me, I own to me, I want ye in Ghana. And the amount was on my society to me, no, 7 in a put in a parliament, in our driving the house. Seminar, I say, I'm a back of 4 point, and the day of the money Mahama was you. Parliament, you said the Apostle was on money, 6 years by now. I don't say, see, I did your open or somewhere. Somewhere, dear, yes, small, somewhere. Now, the almost yes, small, somewhere, someone ya, your own fine say, a catcher almost say, almost share, no one ya, your moya, and one Ghana. And tea, some way, a some ma, I say a catcher and this before say. Your moya, your fast. Your moya, and then what the galam say, I am party, you might want to chairman or chairman's name or party for. You need your forester, or my room, almost said, you need you. Munjai, na saa to me no your will see a bit, I say, I can't, but that a better now, I'm a for I say, yes, you must say a forest. The best say a message, moon and making sure, say, Mobile man, quickly, and what can I'm obiati, say, Bayana, in the Bapong, they are supposed to say the fight against Galam Sino, Ghana, a very soon with him, and I protect the environment. Sure, I said, wait, your question be any more.
No question.
So, already I spent enough time here. So, this was an information from us. Let us fight. Thank you very much for that. At this point, you will remain clarity here. As I'm doing.
And I'll put a soft copy of the statement on the platform. So those of you who are not on my platform, you can pick from the police. Thank you very much for such a wonderful
Yamashofo ina kwaba yebede obi bia se mo amogina so since you fear se finally every fan say the can sign press conference no aba na wie na nsɛm a wɔn discuss here no yɛbɛyɛ upload another short of the story short one so ɛwɔ the YouTube platform on the amistytv nti wɔ ha ɛnɛ your first time a nso ɔbɛsrɛ na wa subscribe na wa like na wa share mi sɛ nkɔfo bɔ NPP for na we nkɔfo bɔ ma we yes saa na ɛte why so opposition dey see about away but on the most no things a wɔn kasa about it ne if say you can say yɛmfa nkɔnso no yɛ so a obi to make us beboa the party and I say beboa the NDC. But you know, as opposition here, no matter what it is, anything be that's how the politics is. Like niawu be opposition will come and criticize you. In Tusha, fee the complaint, even to me as a media person, no. In Tusha caption I was thinking say they are come to talk about the matter of Safo. Because the Safo matter no the consistent and no asema eda hwanka obi say NPP for your press conference mo kasa ba but omo ba no omo to sa matter no to chine na asema na omo kani na so akwakwogina efa wo funny say the budget John Romani Muhammad Baye and on beka ho asem after that no mo call the galamsey issue when you say galamsey issue so me no kasa say ababeye rampant in the society one of rampant in society and kasa me no kasa oko some of the regions the Ahafo South na omo kire omo akwa incorporate yakofa nkofo omo ye Ghanaians say omo bo galamsey site no ban they have a lot of pictures and they going around but to me in fact was an important so okay NDC for na akofo omo aba na NPP for because even when Hon.Adwoa dan kwakufa do kura owo abem no na dem can say galamsey ekoso even the krom chibi na galamsey ne bi ekoso so no matter what it is you can't say galamsey na ekoso no NDC national say and NPP national say but no matter it is no that's what they almost work as okay omo dwen say NDC for na say na omo ye campaign omo kire boys so omo tu no we dem be ma nkofo aye den omo be bo omo nti as for that one day you know as a opposition talk omo be can against you but on the most this and some omo kan ye echechi mu e kan ye nti but this what omo kan ye but I will wish say you will be the part of this family. You subscribe and like we give the latest update both NDC and NPP a lot update nti if you are your first timer can you subscribe like and share you drop any you will be the part of the family. I wish to drop the full video over here to you. Thank you so much for everyone who has been on this channel since the one we started. We are almost 17k. I wish we get 17k very soon. But I wish you subscribe and like and we drop a video. Thank you so much. I love you guys. I love everybody who drop his comments. Finally, I can't read a lot of comments, but thank you so much. I see everyone who is doing our way to the NPP and those kind of things. But thank you so much. Bye bye.